May I have your kind attention, please? We'll be starting with International Solar Alliance session in this hall in 5 minutes. I request all the delegates to be seated, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Interim Secretariat of ISA would like to extend a warm welcome. I request the respected dignitaries to be on the dais. The Interim Director General of the International Solar Alliance, His Excellency Mr. Rupen Tripathi, Her Excellency Ms. Azreen Khan, Charge d'Affaires, High Commission of Fiji, His Excellency Mr. Oliver, Industrial Development Analyst, Rwanda Development Board, Shri Agrim Kaushal, Economic Advisor, Interim Secretariat, International Solar Alliance, Ms. Meghna Jogalkar, Deputy General Manager, Exim Bank of India, Dr. O.S. Shastri, Senior Consultant, Interim Secretariat, International Solar Alliance, I once again extend a warm welcome to all the dignitaries, all excellencies, the Interim Director General of the International Solar Alliance, His Excellency Mr. Rupen Tripathi, respected dignitaries, representatives from prestigious organizations, friends and colleagues, and participants of the program today. The program aims to provide a platform to bring together the ISA member countries and representatives of prestigious organizations for a small interaction. I would like now to invite Dr. O.S. Shastri, Senior Consultant, Interim Secretary, International Solar Alliance, to give a warm welcome.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and the dignitaries in the dais. And today, I have to start with a little apologies note because we are delayed in our starting. But however, we will try to make it up during the course. This is the 5th get-together of the series. As you are all aware, that every 3rd Wednesday of the month, we always have a get-together with the dignitaries from the various embassies and in India, and also the other external excellencies. Now, today afternoon, we have lined up a number of events for you. We have a short film on the ISA, and then, of course, my senior colleague, Shri Agrim, he is going to set up the contest. Then we have a presentation from Exim Bank. After that, we have a program presentations on scaling applications, solar applications from Fiji. Madam Mrs. Khan is going to speak on that. And then we have a scaling solar applications in Rwanda. His Excellency Mr. Oliver is who is the Industrial Development Analyst. He's going to speak on that, about the Rwanda's experience. And then we have Dr. Ashok Das, the Chief Executive from Sanmoksha, is going to talk on scaling mini-grids. Further, of course, I'm looking for somebody from Bangladesh to make a presentation on irrigation pumps. If somebody is there, we'll invite you, please. And then we have a panel discussion. After that, His Excellency, our Upendra Tripathi, will give the International Solar Alliance. He will be giving the keynote address. And then we have country interventions. And then, of course, it's followed by the vote of thanks. This is what we have today's program. And without wasting much of your time, I once again welcome you all for this program. And thank you very much for coming over here. The next presentation will be by Sri Agrim Kaushal, economic advisor. Before that, we have the movie. Is it movie ready? Movie.
1861 Paris. French scientist Augustin Mousseau received patents for the Marmite Solaire. Since then, almost 3/4 of world's energy needs are fulfilled by fossil fuels. The growing carbon menace and the climate hazards are creating global concerns and questioning the pattern of growth. The fact that even today, over 1.2 billion people are having no access to electricity, majorly in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Anyone can guess the burden on fossil fuels and the global anxieties thereby. Amidst all these proverbial darkness, the blessings of the sun come as the biggest relief, offering bountiful solutions for a beautiful living with progress and peace that the world aspires for.
Solar will be the world's largest source of energy within the next 10 to 15 years. There is no way that any of these other sources of energy can compete with solar.
Solar energy is today being used over a large spectrum of applications, right from airplanes to wristwatches. Cost of solar modules during the last 5 years has decreased and is expected to further drop in future. This has resulted in drastic reduction of solar electricity tariffs. Investments in solar energy sector are witnessing a shift from developed to developing nations. However, the challenge is how to maximize solar investments in the Sun Belt region between the tropics, where mankind can benefit the most from solar energy to reduce their fossil fuel consumption. On 30th November 2015, when the world was struggling to find a solution to climate change, more than 70 countries among the 121 countries, lying fully or partially between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, came together and launched an international solar alliance dedicated to reduce the cost of finance and cost of technology for immediate deployment of competitive solar generation assets in all member countries, and to pave the way for future solar generation, storage, and good technologies adapted to countries' individual needs.
Solar energy offers major potential for reducing poverty and limiting greenhouse gas emissions. This will strengthen their energy security, enhance energy access to the poor, reduce spending on costly imported fuel, and reduce demand for carbon-intensive power generation.
We want to bring solar energy into our lives and homes by making it cheaper, more reliable, and easier to connect to grid. It is making the dream of universal access to clean energy become more real.
Pour enclencher ce processus, il nous faut avoir une mise de fonds initiale. Et elle ne peut venir que des États, et donc des financements publics. C'est la raison pour laquelle je remercie tous les pays qui sont ici représentés d'avoir cette volonté. Je pense notamment aussi aux Pays-Bas, puisque les Pays-Bas ont voulu s'associer à la France pour mettre des financements publics.
We intend making joint efforts through innovative policies, projects, programs, capacity building measures, and financial instruments to mobilize more than $1,000 billion of investments that are needed by 2030 for the massive deployment of affordable solar energy.
On 25th January 2016, Honorable Prime Minister of India and Honorable President of France laid the foundation stone of the International Solar Alliance headquarters and inaugurated the Interim Secretariat of ISA at the National Institute of Solar Energy campus at Gurugram. The Secretariat will make proposals before the Assembly to establish and enhance a corpus fund which will generate revenues for the budget of the ISA, with initial donation of $16 million from Government of India and $1 million each from public sector undertakings. Government of India will contribute $27 million to the ISA for creating the corpus, building infrastructure and recurring expenditure over 5-year duration from 2016-17 to 2020-21. The key focus areas of the Alliance will be to promote projects and programs to aggregate demand and reduce cost, financing solar with more than $1,000 billion, work with multilateral banks and bilateral agencies, capacity building, common knowledge platform, and technology. ISA will also collaborate with other multilateral organizations, has planned to organize ISA Reinvest Summits in various countries and continents, and also intends on developing a digital infopedia platform. ISA has set an ambitious target of creating 1,000 gigawatt of solar applications by 2030 in 121 prospective member countries. Let's have a glimpse of few milestones achieved by the International Solar Alliance since its launch on 30th November 2015. Solar irrigation pumps will be a major focus of ISA to provide sustainable energy at a cheaper price. Best practices of solar street lighting can be duplicated in other prospective member countries. Solar rooftop programs, solar energy parks, and green energy corridors can be replicated in several countries. Home lighting systems will fulfill the power needs of millions living in rural and remote areas. Solar energy can also be used in the transportation sector. Concentrating solar technologies can be used to cook food for process heat applications and for space cooling application. Solar water purifiers and solar desalination units will provide clean water to millions of people at an affordable cost. ISA's action-oriented programs will have an immense impact on climate change, as it will give the world a realistic chance of keeping the rise in global temperature below 2 degrees Celsius. Increased demand in solar energy sector will establish new solar manufacturing and associated industries, which would in turn create greater employment opportunities and fuel economic growth. Above all, the alliance will improve socio-economic conditions of the people and bring smiles to their faces and a big relief to the heart of the humanity. The International Solar Alliance is a $1 trillion opportunity to serve the humanity. Come, together let us think sun, and together let us make it brighter.
Thank you, respected dignitaries and all excellencies, for your attention. Now I request and I will invite Shri Agrim Kaushal, Economic Advisor, International Solar Alliance, to give a brief presentation on ISA. We will have a presentation from our respected guest first. I request Ms. Meghna Jogalkar, Deputy General Manager, Exim Bank of India, to give a brief presentation on Exim Bank and energy poverty, how to finance 1,000 bankable solar projects. Please, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Can I just request the presentation to be uploaded, please? Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Meghna Jogalkar, Deputy General Manager. I am with the Lines of Credit Group at the Export-Import Bank of India. It is indeed an honor and pleasure for me to be here today and make a brief presentation on behalf of Exim Bank. Time is short and I have to cover a lot of things. But at the outset, I would like to mention that Exim Bank has been an active player in promoting solar industry, both in India as well as overseas. However, being an Exim Bank, our focus continues to be international projects which are being undertaken by the Indian companies. So before I begin my presentation, the financing mechanisms to finance solar projects, I would like to make a mention here that what we need is actually Indian companies to get projects. Project prospecting is very critical. We have today some of the countries sitting here and we want borrower governments to identify projects. I think against that backdrop, I will now start the presentation. Some of you may be aware, but some of you may not. Very quickly, Exim Bank has been set up under an Act of Parliament by the Government of India. We are wholly owned by the Government of India. Our board of directors, it's a very high-powered board and comprises of top officials from key government ministries, Commerce, Finance, External Affairs, Reserve Bank. Our objective is to provide financial assistance to exporters and importers with a view to promoting countries' international trade. Exim Bank shall act on business principles with due regard to public interest. On this slide, I have put across all the funding programs of Exim Bank. So whatever we fund essentially falls under any one of these programs. So the broad categorization is export credit and finance for export capability creation. Export credit for financing projects, products and services. Now, I'm not going to go in detail with every one of them. I'm just going to focus on three main from the context of our today's subject. I mean, I'm sure there's a Q&A at the end of the session. If anybody has any queries, I'll be most happy to take them. We just saw a brief film on the ISA. And Exim Bank had also undertaken a study on International Solar Alliance, Nurturing Possibilities. So I have this working paper with me here. So this study was done last year in 2016, and it focused primarily on exploring financial cooperation, technical collaboration, and capacity buildings to address the energy needs of the ISA member countries. Now, the study reveals, we have just put some statistics, that from the 121 member countries, only 23 countries had 100% of their population having access to electricity, while 54 countries had less than 66% of their population having access to electricity. Out of the 121, about 50 countries are based in Africa, who have less than 66% of electricity, thereby reflecting chronic electricity deficit. So of course there are some numbers. So some pockets in Africa have been booming, but continued growth and quality of life are being jeopardized by lack of reliable power. So this slide itself shows, I mean, in the last decade there have been an increase in solar installations, but having said that, the potential is huge, especially for off-grid solar installations and decentralized solar installations. Coming to Exim Bank's mechanisms for renewable energy projects, so how does Exim Bank fit with the ISA? I just want to go through some three main programs here, and I would like to spend some more time on our next one, that is the lines of credit. So as most of you in this audience would be aware, that Exim Bank extends lines of credit on behalf of Government of India to overseas borrowing countries. The bank has facilitated various overseas projects in the energy sector, which are being executed by Indian companies. I will come to the exact examples of the solar projects currently being undertaken under LOCs like Mozambique, Sudan, etc. In my coming slides. So here the request is received from developing countries. Ministry of External Affairs and Ministry of Finance, Government of India issue approvals, and the lines are operated through Exim Bank. I thought I'll take this opportunity to briefly explain how the LOC process is initiated. So actually here the borrower government identifies a project and they connect with the Indian mission overseas. I want to make a mention that detailed project reports are mandatory now. So however, if any borrower government at this stage only has a feasibility report, it can initiate the discussions with the Indian missions. The Indian missions forward these proposals to the Ministry of External Affairs, and it is Ministry of External Affairs along with Ministry of Finance approves the project and the LOC. I don't want to spend too much. So basically Exim Bank extends the LOC on behalf of Government of India, and the line of credit agreement is signed between Exim Bank and the overseas borrower government. Here I would like to spend a little time because the lines of credit guidelines, the LOCs are operating under guidelines which last were revised in December 2015. So as I mentioned, DPR preparation is mandatory. So now the DPR cost can be covered under the LOC itself. Then based on the DPR and the tender documents prepared by the borrower government, Exim Bank undertakes a pre-qualification exercise. So we essentially shortlist Indian companies who can execute that particular project. We forward the names of the shortlisted companies to the overseas borrower government. The overseas borrower government then undertakes the competitive bidding among the shortlisted companies and selects the Indian company. So it could be an Indian consultant for DPR, it has to be an Indian PMC as well as an Indian EPC contractor. And then the borrower government sends the contract to Exim Bank for inclusion under the LOC, after which we follow the process. Next, of course, comes after the contract has been included, the Indian company starts shipment of goods and services and installation at the project, and Exim Bank disburses funds under the lines of credit, and the borrower government repays the line of credit back to Exim Bank. All of you would be aware that the Government of India announced 10 billion of line of credit during the India-Africa Forum Summit in 2015. So Ministry of External Affairs has approved 15 to 20%, that is 1.5 to $2 billion out of this 10 billion for undertaking solar related projects. So I just want to re-emphasize again that, the borrower governments need to identify projects. Indian companies need to prospect solar projects, which we could then consider, MEA, MOF could consider under the line of credit, and Exim Bank can implement that. The chart, of course, shows a brief number of the size of the LOC portfolio as on 31st March 2017. Exim Bank so far has supported solar projects aggregating 41.08 million, which have been completed, and currently about 55 odd million projects are under execution in Niger and Nigeria. Just giving 2-3 examples. There is Sierra Leone solar street lighting project. There is Mozambique, where a turnkey project for manufacture of solar PV modules was covered under a 13 million LOC. We have also financed a solar electrification project in Sudan, which has, which has had immense use to these countries which did not have any electricity. Since this occasion, I thought I'll take this opportunity to even highlight some of the other flagship programs which Exim Bank would consider for financing of solar projects or other renewable energy projects. So besides LOC, Exim Bank extends buyer's credit under National Exporter Insurance Account. Now this is essentially for supporting project exports from India to overseas countries. Now these are typically on deferred payment credit terms, and the facility covers 85% of the contract value. And typically the credit period extended is from 8 to 15 years. So we could very well consider projects under the buyer's credit scheme as well. We have also, Exim also extends commercial buyer's credit to overseas buyers who are executing projects. Here also for the Indian company, of course, there is no credit risk or there is no buyer risk because the exposure is taken directly on the overseas buyer by Exim Bank. And in this, we of course have examples of financing wind projects we have considered in Mauritius, and a few more others are under consideration. This is again one of the very old programs that Exim Bank has been doing. That is what we call as the overseas investment finance. So for example, if an Indian company wants to set up a project overseas by setting up a wholly owned subsidiary or a joint venture, then Exim Bank can consider funding such an overseas effort of the Indian company. And here the loan can sit either in the Indian parent or the overseas subsidiary. It can be structured both in Indian rupees in India as well as in foreign currency overseas. The funds can be given both for equity participation as well as direct debt participation. And this is typically a 5 to 7 year kind of a funding on commercial terms that we have been doing. Now under OIF, we have several examples of renewable energy projects which Exim Bank has supported in various countries. Just to give some numbers, 31st March 2017, Exim provided finance to 587 ventures set up by over 451 companies in 78 countries. This is the overall portfolio, but it does comprise a number of renewable energy projects. So to conclude, I mean, way forward in furthering the ISA initiatives, we would continue extension of financial assistance to solar projects in ISA member countries. Apart from this, Exim Bank has institutional linkages with various other multilateral regional development banks, which we could consider, for large size projects and partnering with them for funding. Assist in implementation of the ISA program, facilitate preparation of DPRs. As I mentioned under the lines of credit itself, DPR preparation is now a mandatory condition. Structuring of projects, facilitate interaction among stakeholders, organizing information dissemination programs in ISA. In fact, in October, Exim Bank would be organizing a program related to the ISA event, designing of training program for personnel and knowledge management, technology sharing of information, etc. So I think that would be all from my end. Again, I would just like to close by saying that, let us have projects and which we could cover under any one of the financing mechanisms of Exim Bank. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your insights. We will now move for the presentations on the programs under ISA. The first presentation, I would like to invite Her Excellency Ms. Azreen Khan, Charde Affairs High Commission of Fiji, New Delhi, to give the brief presentation on scaling solar applications in Fiji.
Director General Shri Upendra Tripathi, respected dignitaries, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Bula Vinaka and Namaste to everyone. This afternoon, I have been asked to make a presentation on scaling of solar applications in Fiji. And I have only 5 minutes, so I'll keep it very brief and short. And I'd like to thank International Solar Alliance for giving me this opportunity to present on the solar applications in Fiji this afternoon. To begin with, I would like to briefly show you where Fiji is on the world map and some of the effects of climate change in Fiji and the Pacific Island developing states. As you can see, Fiji is located in the South Pacific Ocean, and it is very near to Australia and New Zealand and other Pacific Island countries. Fiji has a wide range of natural resources that includes biomass, geothermal, ocean energy resources, hydraulic resources, solar and wind, which can be converted into renewable and solar energy, with of course, with the help of agencies like International Solar Alliance. Fiji and climate change. As a small and developing island state in the Pacific Ocean, Fiji faces the negative effects of climate change, including unpredictable storms of extreme intensity, such as tropical cyclone, which struck Fiji in February 2016. The rising sea levels have caused the Fijian government to identify some 80 villages for relocation to higher grounds. And warming seas, which have caused changes in fish populations and bleaching of coral reefs. These are very extreme threats of climate change. Fiji has been quite committed to achieving its sustainable development goals, and we take our cue from Sustainable Development Goals 7 and 13, which talks about affordable and clean energy. And we are currently, Fiji had been in the process of implementation of solar energy and its applications since 1983, and now progressing to take the leadership role in the world by taking the presidency of COP23. And recently, Fiji also co-chaired with the government of Sweden the United Nations Summit as a direct result of its endangered relationship to the sea. I will have 3 slides mainly, which will talk about solar energy in the past and the present and the future. Solar technologies have been proven feasible and is being exploited in many forms in Fiji, such as solar home systems, as you can see on the slides, solar water pumps, solar water heaters, to name a few. The exploitation of renewable-based technologies reduces Fiji's reliance on imported fuels, whilst at the same time improves the livelihood of rural dwellers. The Department of Energy in Fiji has been assisting villages in the installation of solar water pumps to cater for village water supply needs. The solar pumps operate in the daytime during normal sunshine hours and automatically switch off at sunset. This allows the borehole to replenish its water level before pumping starts the next day. So this is how it is managed in Fiji. Another advantage of pumps that is that they are fitted with sensor and floating switches to regulate the volume of water and level of water inside the boreholes. In early 2008, the Department of Energy, through contracting, was able to install 6 solar street lights on the jetty in Koro Island, which is shown on the slide. This is currently operational and is being monitored by the Department of Energy. Since 2012, the Fijian government, with the cooperation of the Government of India and Barefoot College, has trained almost 40 solar mamas. These are women from the rural areas and villages, and they have been trained in the solar electrification field. These women who have returned back to Fiji were able to solar power their villages and their communities where they live in. Fiji and solar energy in the present. Fiji has been supporting the initiatives of ISA, which was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji in November 2015, and has now become one of the first 15 countries to ratify the framework agreement and becoming one of the founding members of the ISA. As you can see, Fiji has just recently, this was in the news yesterday, Fiji has commissioned the 2 solar home systems electrification projects worth close to 180,000 in Namara village and Nakulau village in Ra province. More importantly, it also means that rural villages will be using a cleaner and environmentally friendly source of electricity that will help slow down climate change and reduce its effects. A total of 44 families in the 2 villages are now being provided safe, stable energy supply. In the future, recently I visited Shakti Pumps in Indore, and they have, this was something very new to me, but I was able to see the solar pumping irrigation systems that they have in place, and Fiji is quite keen on adopting those systems, and including solar microgrids, which I believe ISA is currently working with the Department of Energy in Fiji to implement some solar microgrids. The way forward, we are, now that we have signed the ASA and ratified the ASA, would like to now work very closely with ISA to secure some funding and implement some irrigation and microgrids and solar irrigation and microgrid systems. We're looking forward to the official ISA Foundation ceremony scheduled for 9th December. There is a need, like the Honorable Prime Minister has mentioned, there is a need to deploy massive deployment of affordable solar energy by 2030. conscious shift to the use of solar power by all nations, including Fiji, easy access to finance. I was happy with the presentation from Exim Bank, and I would like to discuss this further with the Exim Bank on how to secure funding. Of course, we need, as small island states, we need more clarity on grant elements that are included in the financing documents. And we'd like to, the respective ministry to re-look at the category of list of countries which are able to access these finances. So these are some of the issues that we'd like to discuss and raise with the ISA in Exim Bank. And we'd also like to find out from Exim Bank the time frame that is involved in acquiring these LOCs, and if there are any other mechanisms that we can, as small island states, can tap into. That brings to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for providing an overview. I would like to invite His Excellency Mr. Oliver, Industrial Development Analyst, Rwanda Development Board, to give a brief presentation on scaling solar application in Rwanda.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to everyone. It's a great pleasure for us to be here. My name is Olivier Ngorawang. I work with the Rwanda Development Board as the Industrial Development Analyst. And as I mentioned, I'm happy to be here with my colleague from the private company that are here as well to participate at this conference. And we would like, first of all, to share with you the experience with Rwanda, especially when it comes to scaling up solar applications, as well as the overview on how Rwanda is doing in terms of renewable energy. I just want to start sharing with you with just some key vital statistics about the country. Most people might not be aware where Rwanda is located, but you can see Rwanda is located at the very heart of Africa. It's a small country, but its strategic position in the whole Africa makes it a country with numerous opportunities. This is because Rwanda is a member of various regional integration. Here, I want to mention the East African Community. I want to mention the Common Market for South and East. I want to mention as well the region of Great Lakes, which makes sure that the market for Rwanda goes beyond 12 million up to more than 500 million. You can see progress so far in terms of GDP growth, per capita income, the national savings, investment, as well as the trade balance. In terms of power generation, Rwanda has done quite significant progress. In 2009, we were at a generation capacity of around 89 megawatts. But due to the very conducive business environment and a strong support from the government in terms of facilitating private investment, we've been able to more than double the existing generation, and we are currently at 208 megawatts, of which actually more than 50% of the total generation is from renewable sources. And here I want to mention basically hydro and solar. In terms of potential, you can see Rwanda has potential in terms of hydropower, methane, geothermal, peat, and basically solar, which is one of the key potential area of opportunity and one of the areas that the government is much focusing currently, where we have a high solar radiance of 1,890 kilometers per square, whereby you find that we have more than about 6 hours of solar during the day. In terms of access, we are currently at 34%, of which 27 is grid connected, and the remaining 7 from grid connection. And basically this is with the solar systems. Rwanda has quite ambitious target, and we are looking forward to be able to achieve the universal access within the next 7 years. This is by 2024. We want to make sure that we achieve the 100% access for all the population of the country. And if you can see, you could see the scope that we have, especially for off-grid connection, whereby we expect the overall access to electricity off-grid connection would account 48% of the total connection. The government of Rwanda has been able to work on very regulatory frameworks to ensure that business are operating in a conducive environment. We want to be talking about investing in a country, investing in renewable energy, attracting more solar projects, unless there are very supporting instruments and mechanisms that is going to fast-track and promote private investment in this area. On the side of Rwanda, we come up with various strategies, such as one of the key strategies is to diversify source of energy, to go from relying on the diesel generation, fossil generation, but rather focusing on domestic and renewable sources of energy. This is the overall strategy. We want to phase out a totally fossil generation. And we have come up with the rectification strategy, which basically highlights on how the government is intending to accelerate the rural electrification program all across the country. In this line, normally we used to have electricity generation licensing that is being given to private developers in hydro, in solar. But since we adopted the rural electrification strategy, where we are attracting more solar companies to come in the country, we came up with a very simplified regulation to support the off-grid access, off-grid promotion, off-grid businesses taking place in the country. We have also come up with the PPP law, which is a public-private partnership, basically highlighting on how the government is going to be engaging with the private community. It's very good for any business dealer, for any investor to operate in a condition whereby you know there is supporting regulation and instruments that is going to drive the business. So all these laws has been approved. And one thing I need to mention is that, as you can see, most of the laws has been gazetted, approved by the cabinet. This is to show how the government is behind the decision taken in terms of rural electrification. It's not an institution-based, it's not an institutional decision, but it's the central government decision to support rural electrification. Another key document that is very important underlying in this area is the investment code, which basically highlights a number of incentives and support given to private investors in renewable energy. I just want to go briefly in detail about this rectification program, where all initiatives and progress done in the area of solar. We have come up basically with 4 main programs. And for program number 1, it's a program basically aiming at enabling access to the poorest people in the country. These are the people whose purchasing power capacity is very, very low. Normally in the country, you have various categories where every Rwandan belongs to. And in the first category, the government has decided to provide a subsidy to make sure that everyone in the remote area can have access. Program number 2 is basically on how to mitigate on risk. And in here, we have engaged with the SREP fund. Most of you might be familiar with that. This is the Scale Up Renewable Energy Plan. And Rwanda has been granted this facilitation, which should be basically to implement, to ensure that we can offer loan to the community to be able to access the system. On the other hand, we also, through this fund, be able to make sure that private company can get very cheap loan to invest into solar systems, whether through standalone systems that's going to be distributed in rural and remote areas. Program number 3, within this rural electrification strategy, this one is basically focused on mini-grids. Because in remote areas, there are areas where people are scattered, but there are areas where people are living in a village. And we thought that having mini-grid developed, this is one of the strategy. So within mini-grid as well, we have private company tapping into these resources to be able to invest in off-grid area. Given that mini-grid basically is one of the area whose investment is very significant, we thought that the next program, which is program number 4, it's a program that will be intending grid connection to ensure that any private investor, any business leader who has invested in mini-grids is not losing out his investments. But once the grid has reached the location, the mini grid is going to be connected to the national grid to still make a viable business. What are the areas of potential we'd like to share with you? Basically, when we talk about solar, there are some key areas we are focusing on, and that are areas of opportunity. Normally, we used to say that Rwanda as a country of 1,000 hills, but also referred as a country of 1,000 opportunities. Among the opportunities, we want to share that in terms of off-grid, 65% of the population of Rwanda lives in off-grid area. That gives an opportunity, a market gap of 1.2 million households that need access to electricity through solar system, either standalone system, either mini-grid systems. Also, there is the availability of various seed funds that would support private investor businessmen in the solar industry. They can tap into SREP fund to get the loan, cheaper loan, to do business in solar, but also we have an initiative from GIZ, which is result-based funding, and basically with this they are providing grants for mini-grids, whereby you could be kind of reimbursed from 40% to 70% of your investment in solar. When it comes to solar, we don't also look at solar just for lighting, but we have extended renewable energy even to street light. Currently, for any new street lights to be any roads that are going to be electrified, we are looking forward to use solar street light. And there is a clear provision that has been adopted by the government that for the construction of the new roads in the country, they are going to be including solar street light in the same package. So for anyone who wants to construct any road in the country, it should include provision of solar street lights for the new roads to be constructed. After sharing with you all it takes to grasp the existing opportunity in renewable energy, I think I agree with you that for any business and investment to take in place, there are some very prevailing conditions that are needed for any business to take place in the country. For the side of Rwanda, Rwanda has been quite doing more in terms of changing the policy, revising the policy to make sure that the country is very conducive for the business. And this is some of the reason why we think business in solar could be channeled to Rwanda, because Rwanda is the first country in East Africa in terms of ease of doing business. This is according to the World Bank report, and the third most competitive economy in Africa. Looking at the economic growth, Rwanda has been able to sustain its economic growth for the last 9 years at 80%, and we're looking forward to have it raised to 11.5% by 2020. Rwanda is the most efficient government due to the very clear vision that the government has adopted and the strong and political stability that reigns in the country. We also want to mention the credibility that the country has been ranked over and over in the lab, whereby you see that according to the Standard & Poor's Outlook, Rwanda has been ranked as B+, and B according to Future Ratings Outlook. Another key element is the friendly business environment, where only it takes 6 hours, even less than 6 hours, to open a business in Rwanda. And it is done through online platform, whereby you can just register your company while you are here in this conference, and when you go back in your office, you print out your business certificate and you start your operation in the country. Very simplified, very easy to start a business. And this has a key important role when we are fast-tracking the development of solar for rural electrification. Looking at the market, Rwanda is a member of the international integration that we have, such as EC, the Great Region Lakes, the Common Market for East and South Africa, which makes the market for Rwanda more than 500 million, because that Rwanda could be the hub of the Africa and be able, when you have business in Rwanda, you could easily upscale it elsewhere. Some of the incentives that has been put together to support, they are cross-cutting within various priority sectors in the country. To share with you some of them, we have fiscal and non-fiscal incentives. On the fiscal incentives, these are the support the government has put in place to make sure that business and investment in the country could really move forward. Number one is that for any investment, for any business who want to relocate their headquarters in the country, they benefit 0 tax on corporate income tax. There is no tax once you choose to relocate your headquarters to the country. We have a preferential corporate income tax of 15%. Normally, the normal corporate income tax in Rwanda is 30%. But for companies, for business operating in the area of renewable energy, in export, in tourism, they are having a very special corporate income rate, which is 15% on their net profits, which is actually 50% discount compared to the other normal business. We have what we call investment allowance or an accelerated depreciation, which goes up to 50% of the capex. Obviously, with this, an investor, a businessman has 5-year, he can take forward all the losses that is going to be incurred because 50% of the capex has been considered as depreciation. Another key element is the tax holiday that is provided for any electricity generation company that produces 25 megawatt and above, automatically qualify for 7-year tax holiday. We provide as well custom tax and exemption for products used in exports, especially when you're exporting 100% of your product. Besides fiscal incentives, the government of Rwanda also has invested more into non-fiscal incentives. Because to make a business viable in a country, it does not only take the tax, but there's various other conditions that an investor, a business needs to operate. That's why we came up with the concept of non-fiscal incentives, which range into various facilitation by the Rwanda Development Board, but also including such as free repatriation of capital and profit. Any investor, any business in Rwanda, there is no restriction in terms of how much of your profit you need to take out of the country or to other business that you might have in other country. So there's a free repatriation of your capital, your assets, your profits. There is a lot of facilitation and support provided through the aftercare team. Aftercare team is a department within the RDB, which basically is there to support, to ensure that once a project has got all the permits, being the purchase agreement, being the cooperation agreement, a company might have started, but in the implementation phase of the project and even during the operation phase of the project, some issues might come on the way. In Rwanda, we have that specific unit that ensures a follow-up to each specific project. So once a project is registered, we appoint a key staff of Rwanda Development Board to ensure the successful implementation of that specific project. There is a staff appointed to assist. If the investor needs to make some contacts, need to meet some government stakeholders, need to meet with the local authority, even if they might have an issue with some tax authority, then the person is there to support you and advise you in the process. All this has been put in place to ensure that any business happening in the country is operating in a very conducive environment. Another key important, in Rwanda, it is open for anyone who can do business. There is no restriction in terms of where you're coming from. It's open across all key sectors. We also want to share with you the progress with the ISA. One of the key expectations, so far we are looking forward with partnering and collaborating with the ISA, is the facilitation in terms of access to finance from various international organizations that are supporting basically new rectification, support in terms of building and enabling solar markets, especially through the collaboration with the energy private developers whose delegates are present here, and also to facilitate in information and exchange, basically looking at various productive usage of solar energy. And also, we are much looking into facilitating into promotion to have a manufacturing base in the country of solar equipment for lighting or for power generation. We are also looking into facilitation through the mobilization, through the networks of ISA, that solar company could come and explore what Rwanda has already on the plate for solar energy, given the priority it is given, it has been granted on this development and rectification, and also considering the platform that already exists and the gap which forms the market currently for private company to come and participate in rural electrification program. Coming to the end of my presentation, I would also take the opportunity to welcome you and to invite you to the Renewable Energy Conference that we are organized by the Energy Private Developers. It's an association of private companies operating in the renewable energy. They're organizing an international conference on solar, and this basically is going to take place next month from 19th to 20th. The registration is open at the link below. And it's a conference going to focus basically on understanding priority and the plans of government in terms of rectification. There will be various exchanges in terms of solar technologies across different areas and sectors, but also going to give an opportunity for exhibition of various solar technology, as well as a matchmaking platform between solar manufacturers, solar business dealers, and government authorities to ensure that the target we want to achieve from 70% off-grid access to raise it by 48% in the next 75 years to come. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for providing the prospectus from Rwanda. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Ashok Kumar Das, Chief Executive Officer, Sun Moksha, Bangalore, to give a brief presentation on scaling solar mini-grids.
Thanks a lot. I thanks ISA to give me the opportunity to share some of the learnings of how we need to scale microgrids in India or anywhere else in the world. I will just start with a few pointers from the ISA mini-grid program, especially highlighting rural areas, capacity building, mitigation instruments, monitoring, then investment problems, developing skills, especially the local skills. How do you develop local skills and build a skilled marketplace? So I'll be touching upon many of these aspects that is required to scale the microgrids. We all know about this, that in Africa, Asia, and India is a major portion of the access to energy problem. And we believe that decentralized RE microgrids are the solutions for that. Why? Because microgrids are efficient, reliable, cost-effective for ensuring energy security, which is important compared to the grids, right? And then they are interoperable with grid, so it can be grid connected, grid off-grid, both possible from the same microgrid. They are scalable, sustainable through renewable sources, and they can power productive load compared to the solar home lighting systems that are quite prevalent in this sector. Why productive load? Because only then we can empower our villagers and farmers and rural lower population to improve their livelihood through agricultural output, post-harvesting activities, livelihood. Microeconomic zone is one key component that we emphasize on, where we groom micro-entrepreneurs to increase their income. And microgrids play an important role. A very recent study by a UK firm also confirmed that livelihood loads are important for microgrids and mini-grids to scale. Just solar home lighting, just lighting the household is not sufficient. For that, maybe the whole solar home lighting system is what we need. We have seen many microgrids. We know many of them have not worked. I have tons of examples of failed microgrids. And we learned from there to realize that the key, 3 or 4 key points that have hindered the growth of microgrids are, they're very small in size. So that doesn't scale, and when the demand increases, the people want more and more. These microgrids are not able to provide. Again, the second is the remoteness of the location. Most of these microgrids are in remote locations, and providing technical support to these remote locations is a very essential part. And we have realized that 80% of microgrids, failed microgrids, have suffered because of technical ongoing maintenance and technical support. Of course, lot of demand management. Most of the time we are just focused on how do we supply, but not on how do we manage the demand. And by managing demand, we have been able to reduce the capacity. We have been able to, improve the quality. So a lot of other efforts, a lot of other benefits come if we remove the management with demand management. And the last but not the least, solar only may not be a solution because the battery storage technology, etc. So multi-source has to be there. We have to put biomass, we have to put biogas, mix it with solar, and that is what we have been trying to do in various locations. This is the framework that has been created from ISA and World Bank, and most of the efforts today in mini-grid, microgrid are focused around tier 1. You give light, you give, lantern and be happy, or give a mobile charger and be happy. What we need to move is we need to move to tier 4, tier 3 and 4. That is where the whole action in microgrid is, and that is where microgrids and mini-grids become more viable. Of course, tier 5 is equivalent to the grid, so that is a dream. But at least to tier 3 and 4 we need to go. So what we have done, I'll just walk you through an example that we have set in a remote village in Odisha. It's Puranakot, Angul district, about 140 households, 600 population, a lot of agricultural land, and we have set up some street lights, irrigation pump, micro enterprises with a 30 kilowatt solar power plant. The reason we could not do multi-source here is because it's a tiger reserve, and I could not do engines, I could not do the quietness, the planet component had to be taken care, so solar became the only choice. Plus our sponsor also wanted solar. So what we have done is, this is these are the household. We have a solar power plant in the center. Does it work? No. So we have a solar power plant. There are electrical microgrids throughout the village. We have gone underground electrical microgrids, which go through a control box, distribution box, then a control box to the left bottom corner, and then goes to the household. And that control box is what we have developed, a controller to manage the load, the demand side management. That control box is spread throughout the village. You can see small squares throughout the village, and that is connected to my local gateway and server through fiber optics cable. So we have laid fiber optics cable throughout the village along with the electrical cables to communicate with my controller, and that controller takes care of metering, billing, payment, customer relation management, scheduling. So all the street lights are scheduled, or lighting, or home system power system is scheduled at the what time we will give power to which household, to which businesses. And on the demand management, if you look at to the right side corner of the solar profile goes like a bell curve. So we manage the load accordingly so that I can optimize the utilization of the solar resources. So complete supply demand management is what is the key feature of what we have developed. And we have smart sensors throughout the village to understand, to make sure that my solutions are working fine, that the solar is giving what it should give, the temperature, moisture is correct, the moisture in the soil can also be measured to provide the right amount of irrigation water, not just flood irrigation, but metered amount of irrigation water. And that has also gone sidelined into a development of a separate project just for irrigation. How do we manage the irrigation of the land? And we have also have a mobile app for the villagers, which is again language independent. There is no languages, just the symbols to know their usage, to understand to pay their bills, to file their complaints. And when they file their complaints, it's all about voice or pictures, no writing. So that makes our solutions much more versatile and applicable or adaptable to various locations and various regions. In this village, there is not even a mobile tower, so we have put a VSAT satellite dish to communicate the data remotely to our cloud server. Now, why do we need that cloud server is essentially the other key component of our solution, that the remote command center can be is equipped with high-end technical persons. But locally, we are training the local youth to go and do the maintenance. So the local youth sees the same data that we see remotely. And if there is a problem, for example, here, the DB number 10 had an issue. So he also knows there is an issue. I also know there is an issue. If it can be fixed by him, he fixes it. Otherwise, he calls us and we look at the data and solve that problem. So in addition to technical support, it also enforces accountability, scalability, and affordability. Like we know everywhere it's all transparent whether the things are working or not working. So my sponsor in Finland knows whether my solution is working or not. His investment is not gone waste. And then, of course, continuous stakeholder engagement of the sponsors, investors, developers, government. Anybody can go and look at the data and make sure that what we have said or what the system is working and people are being benefited. So these are the youth we have trained, and we work closely with the youth because they are the future. And most of them are high school failed or middle school pass, and they are able to handle our solution. This is what has happened after we brought the solution to that. So not only access to energy, but a lot of livelihood activities have been the key component of this. And that is where our focus has been. How do we create more and more livelihood activities? So we have been able to provide in this village at tier 3 and even tier 5. We are capable of tier 5, but most of our solutions in the villages are tier 3 and tier 4 of the energy access ladder. We have been recognized by Mr. Goyal when he was the energy secretary, then Mr. Tripathi, he has visited us. We got Smart Village Award and we got the Millennium Alliance Award as well. So I will end with a video that DW News has created for us, and that will tell you this is just the technology which we can discuss later, but we have an entire range of technologies to develop the real smart village. Can we have the sound?
The remote village located in a tiger reserve is not connected to the electricity grid, cutting off its 600 residents from the developed world. Most people here are farmers. They still follow a traditional way of life. But things are changing. For the first time, Chotki's residents have access to electricity, provided by this 30-kilowatt solar power plant set up earlier this year. It's part of a green technology project, the brainchild of social entrepreneur Ashok Das.
We had given them 200 watts.
He's partnered with local authorities to create India's first smart village in Odisha. Ashok's company has developed a smart nanogrid technology that allows the village's entire electrical infrastructure to be monitored remotely by the company's staff. Meters and sensors collect data on energy consumption, making it easy to remotely manage supply and demand. Villagers pay tariffs based on how much energy they use. The company has also trained local youth from the village to monitor the system and detect any faults or overloading. They can even carry out basic repairs on the spot, ensuring the equipment is well maintained and running smoothly. Ashok says the model can be a game changer.
By doing smart microgrid, what we are creating a basic infrastructure. We are creating a catalytic infrastructure on which many services will ride. Irrigation will ride, agricultural production will ride, food processing can be done, cold storage can be done, health services will come, tele-education services will come. All of these together provide the development for the village.
Many in the village are sensing new opportunities. Shrikant Adavar recently bought a photocopying machine and printer. In a makeshift office, he makes copies of ID cards and land deeds for his customers. as well as takes passport-sized photos. It's a crucial service in rural India, where citizens need those documents to apply for government loans and open bank accounts. Earlier, people had to travel 50 kilometers to the nearest town to get their documents photocopied. So I thought, now that we have reliable electricity, why don't I provide the services right here? It saves villagers time and money, and I supplement my own income. Existing businesses, too, are seeing the benefits of uninterrupted access to power. As night falls, many can continue to operate. Street vendor Prabhakar Pusti also runs a grocery store. He now plans to invest in a fridge and offer cold drinks to his customers. Since we have electricity, my business has definitely improved. My shop can stay open till late in the night. I get more customers. For most villagers, the biggest changes since electricity arrived are simple. Street lights provide safety from wild animals, a priority in this tiger reserve. A few households have now got television sets, providing entertainment and drawing a large young audience tonight. Some even get to attend a coaching class in the village and do homework in the evening. Power that empowers. There are now plans to replicate Chotki's smart village model in other Indian states.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your deep insights on mini-grids. Now we will move to our panel discussion, Roadmap to Achieve ISA Mandate. I would now like to invite our panelists to take the seat on the dais. His Excellency Mr. Carlos, Minister and Deputy Chief of Mission, Embassy of Peru in India. His Excellency, Kenya is not there. Dr. Anurabha Ghosh, CEO, Council on Energy, Environment and Water, CEW. Mr. Pranav R. Mehta, Co-Chairman, Global Solar Council, and Mr. Amit Kumar, Senior Director, Theory, who will be the moderator of this panel discussion. Again request Dr. Anurabha Ghosh, CEW. So please, you can.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are at the fag end of this whole session of ISA, but at very important juncture because we are going to discuss as to what should be the roadmap if we were to achieve ISA's mandate. So essentially, what's the mandate of ISA? Broadly speaking, we are talking of aggregating demand in all these countries so as to move towards a buyer market as far as solar is concerned. And also, in a sense, upscale everything in a very accelerated fashion. And of course, we heard Minister saying that one of the objectives is also to mobilize investment of $1,000 billion by 2030. And of course, the associated elements like enhanced capacity development, knowledge exchange, and these kind of things are also there in order to go towards the overall goal of International Solar Alliance. Fortunately, to dwell upon these subjects, we have very eminent panelists. So first of all, I would request His Excellency Mr. Carlos, who is Minister and Deputy Chief of Mission, Embassy of Peru in India, to express his views and what he sees from his country's perspective as to in what direction and in which key points ISA should be focusing on. Sir.
Thank you. Thank you to all of us, General Director. Thank you for inviting Peru. ISA, the International Solar Alliance, it was a kind of salvation for the willing of Peru to improve the energy sources for the poorest people in the country. That's our goal. And it's a goal that it's accordant with the development sustainable goals that means that we have to join efforts in order to achieve a better way of life to our citizens. ISA is the way that we have chosen to do that, with the energy clean and sustainable. The will of the Peruvian government is to collaborate as much as possible, trying to get a regional, in South America, a regional effort in order to achieve these goals and to create a support between our states and the International Solar Alliance. I think I can resume that and we can carry on later. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. And you raised two very important points. One is that we need to collaborate as much as we can, and rather than very individualistic approach, we should actually focusing on the regional approach. I would now turn to Dr. Arunabha Ghosh, CEO, Council on Energy, Environment and Water. I think he is most appropriate person to discuss this particular aspect, not only because of the fact that he is leading number of initiatives which are culminating in this particular direction, but also his name signifies light of the sun. So Dr. Ghosh, floor is yours. You might like to also dwell upon as to what lessons one can learn into, and if we were to imagine that such kind of roadmap is already there, what would be its milestone that you would think?
Thank you very much, and my apologies. With so much happening in renewable energy, you're needed in multiple places at the same time. So I was called to the other room, and then I was called back. So my apologies for not being here a few minutes earlier. My name, in fact, means first rays of the rising sun. So it's kind of, in a way, appropriate that I happen to work on renewable energy. But I think the roadmap that we have to look at for ISA should be to follow, and I mentioned this in other platforms before, three very simple mantras. Can we do something through ISA which we can't do on our own as individual countries that would be faster, that would be cheaper, and in ways that has not been imagined before? And that simply means that can the deployment of existing technologies happen faster, at a faster pace of deployment than countries have been individually succeeding in doing? Can we do it at a cost of finance which is cheaper than what individual countries are able to secure funds for? And can we collaborate on developing new technologies or adapting existing technologies to the local conditions of the member states in manners that have not been done before, because the pooling of the R&D and the capacity and the technical skills allows you to push the boundary forward. Now, in that vein, I would suggest that the video that you saw right at the beginning, the various presentations you've had so far, the country examples, the rich country examples, both from Fiji and from Rwanda, I think we are all at a sort of a cusp, at an inflection point for scaling up applications. The pilots have been done. The policies are in place. Exim Bank came and made a presentation. The financial lines of credit are ready to deploy, right? So all the actors are sort of lined up. We need a signal to charge. Now, in which direction should we charge, and what are those milestones we should achieve? And let me just give three ideas, put out three ideas, and we can discuss them. Number one, let's put ISA and its activities and our collective ambitions for ISA front and center on a communication stage. I would recommend that in addition to the ISA summit that will happen, and Mr. Tripathi, of course, will have a significant leadership role on it in December, can we begin to do sort of smaller scale ISA road shows in, say, 10 countries in Sub-Saharan Africa, in Asia, perhaps in South America, perhaps even in the Pacific Islands. What will those ISA roadshows be? It won't necessarily be an investment summit. It would be simply to get the same message that you're hearing today in your countries, through your stakeholders, whether it's your businesses, whether it's your financial institutions, civil society, political leaders, etc. And I think we can aim to do all of that in the course of 2018. So basically, we have a formalized ISA as an organization on 9th of December 2017. Let's aim that by 2018, 9th of December, at least 10 countries have had ISA roadshows. Second quick idea, and this is something that my organization, CEW, is already working on with several other institutions on the request of about 16 signatories of the ISA Framework Agreement on developing a common risk mitigation mechanism. I was particularly pleased when I was looking at the Rwanda presentation, the phase-wise approach to rural electrification. Phase 2, I think, was your risk mitigation strategy. The Exim Bank lines of credit also have a risk mitigation component of it. But the problem here we still have is if you examine country by country, the cost at which you are trying to mitigate the risk is way too high. A B+ project in Rwanda is still going to find it difficult to attract credit at the cost which an A- project will attract. Now, how do we get to that stage? How do we transition from B+ to an A-? This is where the common risk mitigation idea comes in, where there are two types of pooling that happens. You pool multiple risks rather than hedge against individual risks. It could be risks related to the off-taker risk. It could be risks related to currency variability. And it could be risks related to political uncertainty or policy uncertainty. You pool the risks, you normalize the curve a little bit more. And then the value addition of ISA is that you pool risks across countries, that you're not trying to attract finance only as an individual country. So you have a double pooling which normalizes the risk curve even further and lowers the cost of finance. Now, again, I think we can get a basic feasibility idea for this ready by the end of this year. And I think we can, if we push hard enough as a collective, try to capitalize a risk mitigation mechanism of this kind by the middle of next year and perhaps operationalize it again within a year of ISA becoming a formal institution. And the third idea quickly is you again heard about solar pumping. I think in Fiji, the presentation was highlighting. We have a significant need to ensure that the farming communities across our developing nations have access to electricity which is clean but also predictable, so that the wastage of electricity and the wastage of water that happens in agriculture is reduced. India alone has 30 million pump sets. There are millions of pump sets across the world. You begin to convert them to solar, you have significant rollout. But at the same time, it cannot happen wherever we want. So can we aim for a deployment of 1 million pump sets across the ISA member countries, which applies a scientific metric of determining the cost of finance, access to rural credit for the farmers, the level of the water table, the kind of cropping pattern. It's easier to use solar pump sets for horticulture as opposed to, say, growing wheat and so forth. Again, we have done this for every district in India to look at their feasibility and return on investment. We can begin to do that for ISA member countries. Again, a tool like this can be ready by the middle of next year, and we can begin to roll out the deployment by the end of next year. And by 2022, say 5 years from the formal formation of ISA as an organization, we should aim to have at least 1 million solar pumps deployed. So these 3 concrete ideas with timelines, I think it's time that ISA, the inflection point it is at, we get that green light to go forward and start acting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. You raised 2 very important points, technology and cost of financing, which is directly linked to the affordability ultimately. And why I'm saying that these are very important points, because these are also very closely linked with the overall objectives of ISA, that is, one related to facilitating transfer of technology, and another by making solar energy so affordable that it can move people towards universal clean energy access. So thank you for raising those points. Our next speaker is Mr. Pranav Mehta, who is Chairman-elect Global Solar Council. I am not going to go into detail about him because then I would need a separate session for that, and the luxury that I don't have. Suffice to say that while we are only foot soldiers in solar energy, he is the champion. And not for nothing, he is known as Solar Man of India. So, Mr. Mehta, since you are representing Global Solar Council, and we all know that the industry, the private sector is going to play an important role in this overall goal that we have set for ISA, how do you think that the industry and the private sector should fit into the roadmap which we are talking about? Mr. Mehta.
Thank you very much for mentioning the Global Solar Council. So I am representing not only the National Solar Energy Federation of India, which is the umbrella organization of all stakeholders of solar energy in India, but Global Solar Council, which was formed at Paris during the COP21 talks as a side event, has brought the private sector response to the climate change, because the private sector felt that we must also act in the same way as the governments are acting. ISA is essentially government to government, whereas this is a private sector response, which covers all the major countries, USA and Germany, China, etc. Now, ISA mandate, ISA mandate, the way we see it is the solar penetration and solar growth. So how this can be achieved is by a proper approach. For that proper approach, to my mind, I would share from my experience, from our Indian experience, which has paid rich dividends, not only in Gujarat, where, in the initial phase, Gujarat was leading, and then also overall in India. So I have 2 favorite words which I keep on using. One is that we should work hand in hand. That means all the positive forces must combine and work hand in hand. For instance, we have worked with GIZ, somewhere with MNRE, with TERI, to create awareness at various places, etc. So working hand in hand is number 1 important, and number 2 is that we should work in a complementary manner to the aims and objectives of the country's government, and also if there is a regional government, state government, we should work in a complementary manner. Why this is important is because the governments world over works towards the welfare of the people, and that will be greatly served by solar energy. And also, I would also like to say that the approach should be like, traditionally in India, and I'm sure elsewhere also it applies, that we light one lamp from the other and grow further. So lighting a series of lamps of knowledge, of technology, everything that will work. Also, I would say that, again, I go back to the tradition that what did I learn more from when I was in school or college or anything, that I learned maximum from the students who were 1 or 2 years ahead of me, not from some PhD, not from some great knowledgeable person, but I always gained from the person who had recent experience, just 1 or 2 years. So likewise, for instance, I would always say that India, we have gained so much of experience in the last 6, 7 years, and which we can share with the rest of the world, our experience. So that is important. And as was rightly covered, that solar energy has a vast potential for poverty alleviation. So with that objective, we must also, one more word that we use is solar energy must move from class to mass unless it reaches the people. And that is our job. That is where we worked, for instance, in some state, with the state government and the district administration and the local welfare associations, etc., to take the message to the people. Also, equally important is the storage technologies, new storage technologies that are coming up. That solar will be more effective if the proper storage is also there. Equally important is that we must align all our actions to achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, which are interlinked, which is not energy, for instance, is number 7 goal, but at the same time, the other goals of water, that will be served, agriculture will be served, health will be served. So we have to work in an interrelated manner towards achieving these SDGs. In short, my main thing to say is we must join hands, all positive forces must join hands to take solar message and the action for energy to the people, the last mile.
Thank you, Mr. Mehta, in bringing about this very important fact of joining hands. So with that, since we are already run of time, I would request all of you to join hands with me to give a big clap to all my panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, all respected panelists, for sharing their opinion and very insightful discussion. I would now like to invite His Excellency Mr. Upendra Tripathi, Interim Director General International Solar Alliance, for his address.
Your Excellencies, we're really late. We apologize for that for a variety of reasons. I remember before the ISA came into existence, before 30th of November, we were supposed to prepare a working paper for ISA. I think 5, 6 of us, we sat down, we made some 20 copies of that working paper, which is still today in the net. And we're essentially trying to structure what ISA can indeed do. And as Arunabha pointed out, what are the things that can be done uniquely, which has not yet been done. And then we thought that in every field, a lot of things can be done together. And if you look at it in many places, ISA writes, let us make the sun brighter together, or let us make together the sun brighter. And when we took that sentence, we had a poet among us. He said, well, it is a poetic statement, let us make the sun brighter together, but how indeed you make it? And that is the challenge. How indeed we make it? But ISA is a brilliant mechanism, and we can bring a lot of innovations in management of land, management of labor, capital, and technology. Look at the example of Karnataka. They had a lot of problem in getting land for 1,000 megawatt of solar park. There was a logjam in the law for acquisition of land, and two officers there, they got 5,000 acres of land, I think more than that now, 10,000 acres of land without any acquisition proceedings. They just formed a cooperative society, and in the land where nothing grew, they gave 21,000 rupees, Indian rupees per year as lease rentals per acre of land. And there was a beeline of farmers joining that, you please take my land for solar. And look at capital. Capital is important, and that is what the Paris Declaration says, $1,000 billion of credit mobilization. And I remember the debate, between many countries those days, why 1,000 billion? Everybody did their calculation. We couldn't arrive at a figure. Should it be $1,000 billion, $2,000 billion? Now the solution was put a word called more. So if you look at the Paris Declaration, it says more than $1,000 billion. Now how much more? And it is very interesting because the other day somebody said, if you don't do anything, $150 billion is coming to solar sector now. By 2030, you will exceed in any case. You don't need any special arrangements to be made. But beautiful was the Paris Declaration. It says more than 1,000. How much more? That depends on us. Technology. Tremendous things can be done. And that is why we are thinking about the UN ISA Technology Application Center. And that is in the working paper. And in terms of training, if 50,000 people are being trained in India, we can train 100,000 people all across. And those youth, say at the level of ITIs or at that level, they need not only be mechanics, they can be employed, self-employed, and all in solar technologies, because you can invest money. But if we do not have a workforce to look after maintenance, most of the machines will be lying idle. Hence, the challenge is, how do you put things together? Land, labor, capital, technology, and move together. And rightly, Arunava said, money is the real important thing, and I'm so thankful to Terawatt Initiative, CII, CEW, World Bank. They came together. We formed a group in Paris, and that is going to be the first group looking into a way to get a fund. Where risk mitigation can be done, because you need some additional incentive to bring down the cost of capital. And that is a common challenge. And there are challenges in the field of land management. There are challenges in the field of technology management, and of course, manpower management. And I'm sure we're in the right track, and ISA, with all your help and support, will be able to deliver the unique things that we all want. And today's unique thing was that you will be missing the cultural show, because every time we had a cultural show, instead of the cultural show today, you will have the exhibition to go around. And of course, I think we have some working lunch this after also. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With this, we will conclude our session. I would like to thank all respected dignitaries for taking the time to attend this session and deliberate the current state of affairs of International Solar Alliance and the way forward. We greatly appreciate hearing all your perspectives and hope that we work together to achieve the objective of bringing affordable and reliable solar power within the reach of all prospective 121 member countries. I also wish